get ready with me to sign up for the military. I'm signing up for the military because I know my cat-like instincts would be very helpful in combat. And because I think bakas look super cute in a military.
Let's talk about that on Azimuth Podcast. I'm Barrett McNabb, and with me is Kimberly McNabb.
This is the kind of recruit we attract when society has become just so entangled in this death spiral practice of lowering standards, all for the sake of misguided political agendas, and God forbid, the fear of offending the mediocre. This tolerating and now even celebrating mediocrity has led to the slow erosion of the meritocracy. Now our armed forces have no meritocracy and the populace left from which to get its recruits.
Yeah, I saw this and this just weirds me out. It really does. But our armed forces must work as teams, and teams are only as strong as their weakest link. I mean, that's an old adage, but it's true. And when our forces are dragged down by weakest links, the weakest links either do not get promoted or drag down their team, thus building up resentment within everybody. I mean, a lot of times in the military, you have team events, and you do not want to be that guy that drags down the entire team.
No. Diversity and ability, that's what this is. I mean, this does not foster strength through diversity. It only engenders division through disparity.
Yeah, soldiers used to really be tough. I mean, the Army has had standards for a really long time, and I get it, standards move. But let's talk about when I was in ROTC in college, and then also in the beginning portion of my time in the military as a second lieutenant. But the physical fitness standards to be a 100 percentile, so the best. And I'll be honest, nobody ever goes into a physical fitness test saying, what's the bare minimum? Or at least if you do, you're not around a long time. A lot of people want to try, what's the highest score I can get, and try really hard. So the highest score you could get was 300 points. And in order to do that, you had to be able to do 92 push-ups in 2 minutes. You had to be able to do, 82 push-ups in 2 minutes, 92 sit-ups in 2 minutes, and run a 2 mile in 11 minutes and 54 seconds. And that was the 17 to 21 year age range for the United States Army. And this is, pre-1997 and below. So in order to get that score at 100 percentile, 82 push-ups, 92 sit-ups, and in 11 minutes and 54 seconds. So fast forward into the 2000s, around the 9/11 timeframe, the PT standards for that same 17 to 21 year age group went to 71 push-ups in 2 minutes, 78 sit-ups in 2 minutes, and a 13-minute 2 mile time. So you can see that it was easier to get your 100 percentile for that range. Now, can you imagine, as the standards get easier and easier, that means that the quality of soldier that you're getting is obviously lessened as well. Now, the Army justified that by saying that there were so many young people, again, this was the 17 to 21 year age group, so many young people that were couch potatoes, they didn't have the ability or the past of working out. And so they needed to be able to ramp up. So it was kind of this bell curve where as you got older in the next category, the events got harder, but still it never got back to that 82, 92, and 1154 in order to max out that PT test. So if you're looking at the pinnacle of physical strength, oftentimes your physical fitness, you're looking at that late 1990s. You had the fittest soldiers, and now when you look at the various standards, it's dropping, and the Army has gone to a new push-up where there's a deadlift and a pull-up and a plank and a shuttle run and things like that. But the problem there is the Army dug deep and thought what it needed to have a standard be at in order to conduct effective combat operations. But the problem is none of the females were passing the test. Mm-hmm. And so Congress said, hey, look, Army, you got to rework that. Rather than saying, well, we're going to keep the standard. We're going to keep the standard that is set. And if women can't pass the test, then they can't be in the Army. But there were women that could pass the test. So it's not like every single female failed it. But instead of saying, well, we're keeping the standard because this is what the minimum is that we need to conduct effective combat operations, nope, they go back and lower the standard. I mean, when I went to airborne school, you have ground week, tower week, and jump week, and this is at Fort Benning, Georgia. And in the ground week and tower week, they used to have sawdust. It's been since replaced with broken bits of rubber from like on a track surface. They grind it up and put it in. But it used to be sawdust, and inside the sawdust was a particular beetle that had huge pincers, and they would have no problem going up and biting you. And so not only were you trying to survive the Sergeant Airbornes, doing all the training and yelling and physical fitness exercise and stuff like that, but you also had to watch out for these beetles biting you. And heaven forbid you touch one of their beetles meaning the Sergeant Airbornes. You would get scuffed up, and they're in there, and you'd get yelled at and really just physically abused if you wound up hurting one of these beetles. But they could bite you, no problem. Anyway, the beetles are gone because the sawdust is gone. But that was just an example. When I have a great story. Looking back on it, it makes me laugh. But I went to Ranger School a number of times. I never made it through Ranger School. It's always been a sore spot for me. But I attempted Ranger School 7 times, which means I was stupid 7 times. But the first time I was in Ranger School, and this is in the late 1990s, and there was we had just finished 0 week. The Army has gotten rid of 0 week, but basically you could show up a week early and get hazed a lot and knock out some of your tasks, so that on the first week you could go ahead and have some of that already knocked out, like your PT test and your foot march and swim test and combat water survival test and stuff like that. So it was the weekend in between 0 week and the first week of Ranger School, and so we were in the gulag, all of us, the class, and there's probably, I don't know, 200 Ranger students that were in the class, and as we were in formation, a staff sergeant came out of the cadre offices, and he had a, I don't know, 5 to 7 year old girl with him. I'm assuming it was his daughter, and we're standing in the position of attention, and she is there and standing next to her father. And her father leans down and whispers something to her ear, and she shakes her head no and grabs onto his leg and is just kind of burying her face in his leg. And he leans down and whispers to her again, and she again shakes her head. And then finally, he with a little bit more force, he whispers to her again. And I will remember this for the rest of my life. She was still holding on to her father's leg, and she turned and looked at us. And with a little girl, high-pitched voice, she yelled out, "Front-leaning rest position, move!" And we're like, ugh. And so we all get down into the front-leaning rest position, which is the starting point for push-ups. And she starts going, 1, 2, 3. And we respond, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2. 1, 2, 3, 3. And so she didn't have to know how to count. All she had to do was count 1, 2, 3, and we had to keep up with the count. Anyway, as she is getting her rhythm down of doing this, she starts to let go of her father's leg, and now, with gusto, she is walking up and down the line. 1, 2, 3, 27. 1, 2, 3, 28. And we're doing push-ups, and it was the worst smoke session that I have ever experienced in my entire military career. And she just wouldn't quit. And I think part of it was that she didn't realize.
She had probably never done a push-up in her life.
Yeah, she didn't realize or have the compassion or understanding of what she was doing to us after we had just survived 0 week of Ranger School. And so she smoked us. I mean, there were people that were vomiting and she just had her hands on her hips, just going up and down. And her father just was laughing, watching this happen. It was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. And I'm fairly certain that was not authorized. But it made his day, and it made his daughter's day. And I don't know how many. I even think some people like quit and dropped out of Ranger School because they just couldn't take it anymore. Anyway, it was absolutely brutal. It was in the Georgia Sun, and that's something that kind of mental toughness of being smoked by a 5-year-old girl.
When they say
school.
Kids say the darndest things, I don't think that's what they meant.
Yeah, exactly. And in Korea, I was there from December 2000, December 2001. So 9/11 did happen while I was stationed in Korea, and I was an air assault rifle platoon leader on the demilitarized zone. And we the general, the commanding general, the CG was General Honore, and you may know Honore. He became really famous during Hurricane Katrina and Rita because he was the U.S. Army North commander that handled and was stationed in New Orleans during Katrina and Rita. And he's the big guy. It's a famous quote when the press were asking him questions, and he's telling the press, "Look, I don't want you to ask these questions. I just want you to get the message out to people." And they just kept asking questions about the past storm. And General Honore said, "You are stuck on stupid." And it was just he said it twice. You guys are just stuck on stupid, and you need to just get the message out that I'm trying to tell you to get out. And so he actually wrote a book, Stuck on Stupid, about leadership. But
it still applies.
It still applies. But his call sign, because 2nd Infantry Division in Korea, it's called the Warrior Division, and so his call sign was Warrior 6. But his informal call sign, he was a good old boy from Louisiana, and everybody called him the Raging Cajun. But also his informal call sign was Crawfish 6. And so we would instead of calling him Warrior 6 a lot of times. Now on the radio you called him Warrior 6, but in informal communications, if you're talking to somebody, it was Crawfish 6. But still, this guy had a lot of discipline problems. There was if you watch some of our previous episodes, I've talked about Korea before, but it was the absolute Wild West. A lot of alcohol-related incidences and a lot of bars that were...
The Army, no.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of alcohol-related problems. I mean, just crazy stuff like non-commissioned officers, sergeants, putting privates at the position of a parade rest out in the village, and then decking them and then just punching them when they can't respond. I mean, there's stuff like that going on. Again, there were some of the bars. Some of them were regular bars. Some were strip clubs. Some of them were straight up brothels, and you just had just craziness going on. And so with the amount of alcohol-related incidences, old Crawfish 6 said that he was going to make it so that nobody could go off their military installations unless they were in their Class A uniform. So no more civilian clothes. You had to be in Class A's, and you have your name tag and stuff like that. But also on that, he started a radio show. And his radio show, so maybe he was really forward thinking, because it's almost like a podcast,
right?
But in 2000. So anyway, he had a radio show, and young soldiers could call in, and they could complain about their chain of command, and so you'd have a private that would call in and say, my squad leader was mean to me, and I didn't make my bed, so he tossed my barracks room, and it took me 2 hours or 3 hours to clean up the entire barracks room, and it wasn't fair. And here's the thing. That chain of command would have to drive down to Camp Red Cloud and report and stand on the carpet in front of Crawfish 6 and give an explanation of what was going on and why. And so commanders were like, oh my God, I can't believe that, when this radio show would come on, people would listen, the commanders as well, to see, is Private Joe Snuffy going to rat me out on whatever? And so it kind of was, had this toughness to it. But yeah, those are just some of the things that used to happen that I don't think happen anymore.
Well, I just think we're weakening our boys in general. I mean, I grew up with Nerf guns. I have a brother. I grew up on a street with 11 boys. And, you do the Nerf wars in the hallway, and then you get tired of reloading, and then you just chuck everything at each other. And boys, like when I was growing up in high school, I mean, I thought they looked pretty soft, but they would chase each other around a pool with paintball guns, like without even T-shirts on, no protective gear, nothing. And so, I was thinking back to our Nerf war days, and our son got invited to a birthday party.
Okay.
For Nerf gun fights. I'm like, okay, this is cool. So I made sure the kids had...
And that was at his jiu-jitsu studio.
Yeah. So I made sure they had the little Nerf guns and arrows and stuff. And then you go, okay, well, make sure they have eye protective gear. And I'm like, what? Huh? It's Nerf. and so I reluctantly take them to the jiu-jitsu place for the birthday party and, give them the eye protection gear. And so the instructors dim the lights, they, just a little bit. They set up the little jujitsu mats and zigzag patterns so kids can sneak up on each other with the Nerf guns, and put up this camouflage net over to make it look battle-esque. They're 5 to 8 year olds. Okay.
Right.
And so anyway, and then
I thought it looked cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And then they turn on some AC/DC. I'm like, and it's mostly boys, right? It's a Nerf gun fight. I'm like, okay, yeah, it's a boy's birthday party. Let's go. 45 seconds later, they turn on Taylor Swift for the rest of the party. I'm like, this is a boy's birthday party. Turn on the AC/DC.
Turn the AC/DC back on. Well, I'm going to push back on you a little bit about the eye protection. So, in the Army, we wear eye protection. If you go to a gun range, you wear eye protection.
That's because you're a government asset.
I agree, but here's the thing: is it's an axiom. It's a standard phrase. You train like you fight. And so in training, you want to be doing all the exact same stuff that you do in combat. So having these Nerf guns and shooting these things, having eye protection on, it's just setting them up for success to be future killers in the United States military.
No, they need to dodge faster.
Yeah.
So
actually, I've gotten good at dodging Nerf because they do fly pretty slow.
Exactly. They need to learn to dodge faster. They get hit in the eye a couple of times, they'll dodge faster. And by the way, now the audio-only audience won't notice this. I have a red spot in my eye, and it was not from a Nerf gun war.
I bet there's going to be a comment like, you should have worn eye protection.
But it wasn't from Nerf guns. So anyway, we saw this video, and we just had to comment on it like, right. Oh, my God, please.
Don't let this guy in.
Bring back the men, please.
Don't let this guy in. I don't think he's going to be doing a lot of great and wonderful things for democracy by having his cat services.
China will laugh at us.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you so much for watching Azimuth Podcast. Please stay tuned after these messages.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.